We're about to start, so please take your seats and set your mobiles to silent. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon, namaste. My name is Nick Earle. I'm the Senior Vice President for our field operations at Hyperloop One. You only have to look around this room to realize that today is an extremely significant event. From the moment the concept of the Hyperloop was first published in late 2013, the world has got extremely excited about the possibilities. You just think about what could be possible. The ability to go from Delhi to Mumbai in 80 minutes. The ability to live 300 kilometers from where you work and still be able to get there in less than 30 minutes. The ability for every journey to be point to point with no stopping in between. The ability for freight to move coast to coast the same day without the need for the freight stopping. This technology is not just a high-speed transportation innovation, it is actually a transformation innovation that will affect society, will affect business, but most importantly, will give incredible amounts of time back to citizens all around the world. I want to thank all of you for coming, especially our honored guests, many of whom will be speaking. We have a packed agenda, and I know we're tight on time, so I'm going to immediately hand over to our executive chairman, our co-founder, Mr. Shervin Pishevar. Please welcome Shervin to the stage.
Good evening. It's a great honor to be here in India with all of you. Strategically for us, India is one of the most important nations in the world, a superpower. Not just a superpower in terms of political might, but a superpower of energy, of brilliance, of engineering talent, of brain power, of human capital. Where I live in Silicon Valley, I've seen the incredible talent that's flown to America and has helped build so many incredible companies. And so many of those people who are friends of mine are beginning to make the migration back to India. And in many ways, we are here because of that talent. A good friend of mine, I'll give you this one story, was one of the founders of an app called Pulse. And I met him in an Indian restaurant in Palo Alto, my favorite restaurant, and we randomly met there, and he showed me his app, and then LinkedIn bought his company. He was a young guy from Stanford who was born in India, Akshay. And he's now moved back to India as the head of all of LinkedIn in India. So I'm hoping to see him here today. But that's an example of that kind of migration of talent. Humans have always been moving forward to a brighter future. And for us, transportation and movement is a technology, but it's also a movement in and of itself, a movement of humanity to want to be free of time and place, to be able to live and work anywhere in the world. Elon Musk's brilliance in not just in PayPal and SpaceX and Tesla, his brilliant mind came up with the initial idea of Hyperloop, and he's a friend of mine. And on a flight together many years ago to Cuba, a personal trip of ours, we began to talk about his idea of Hyperloop. And I asked him, would this also work for cargo? Would it work for not just moving people, but could we move commerce around the world faster? Could we transform manufacturing and build manufacturing cities and distribute goods and people all over the world faster than any other time in human history, and open up economic opportunity to regions that have been tied off from the rest of the world? And he said, actually, cargo would work. That's a good idea. And I'm also too busy to do this, so I'm going to open source this. And I raised my hand and I said, could I build it? And he said, absolutely. So I began the work, and he pushed him to do the white paper. The white paper was published, and I took it to President Obama one-on-one at the Oval Office for lunch, and I presented it to him, and the president actually had his science team do the background, the diligence, and came back. He read the whole report and said, this is actually a good idea, it could work. And with that, I began to build the company. And as you see some of the talent here, you're going to meet Rob Lloyd, who is one of the most incredible leaders that I've met. He built Cisco, connected the world, was president of Cisco. We're so blessed to have him here. You met Nick, who used to work with him at Cisco as well. They're a dynamic duo, and we are building our team. We're now 225 people full-time. Can you believe that? In two years, we've gone from 0 to 225 employees, 3-acre campus in Los Angeles, our site in Nevada where we're building the first full-scale Hyperloop. We're moving as fast as possible, and we're here today in India on this historic day to announce so many great things that we'll have Rob Lloyd walk everyone through. And we have the honor of having two great leaders of India here today that I would love to bring up for a quick ceremony. So the Minister of Railways, Suresh Prabhu, who we've met and who is a dynamic leader. And Amitabh, if you could also please join us. We just wanted to present to you a small gift and token of our appreciation. I'll get a hang of this. Thank you, Kevin. So if you would like to make some comments, it would mean a lot to us. Thank you so much, Minister.
So good afternoon, friends. We all live in very exciting times. New ideas are born faster than the ideas travel in the mind. And therefore we are seeing a huge explosion into so many new technologies coming to fore. So obviously we are very keenly watching the new development that is taking place, and I really congratulate you, Hyperloop One, the founding chairman, the CEO and his team for thinking about it. And very interesting when you see Bengaluru to Tiruvananthapuram going in only 40 minutes, Mumbai to Chennai 60 minutes, Mumbai to Delhi even probably same time. So very exciting. I am sure we'll definitely watch the developments and watch it very closely as to how it happens. You must be knowing we in India are one of the world's largest network. And we are working on quite a few strategies to revamp the railways. Technology upgradation, infusion of capital, getting new ideas, training of people, revamping the organization, many of these things. But one of the component of that is speed. Not just speed of implementation, which already increased the laying of tracks from 3 kilometers to more than 9 kilometers a day, and we are of course targeting even more. But speed by which people can travel. And there we have multiple strategies. One is to increase the average speed of all our operations. Second, we have taken some corridors like Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, which are the main two trunk routes which pass through one of the most populous states of India, like Delhi, Kolkata goes through Bihar, UP. And there we are already trying to increase the speed with existing tracks. Then we are using Delhi, Chandigarh, and using some partners to enhance the speed there. On the other side, we are working on high-speed railway. We are working with Shinkansen, Japan, and that will be somewhere in the vicinity of 330-340 kilometers per hour. That is already at advanced stage. 2018, hopefully we'll do the groundbreaking and start the work. The third and the fourth is something very interesting. We said why in India we should not develop our own technologies? Why we should import technologies and then develop in India? So we invited in October, 6 companies came from the world, and we said we'd like to have 600 kilometers plus technologies. Obviously, it's not commercialized, and that's why we want it. Because if it's commercialized already, then we have to only have case to get license. So we said we'll co-develop a technology with a partner who has already got some ideas, and then we'll co-develop in India, then manufacture in India, then use in India, then export one day maybe to US. And therefore, that was the idea. And we already started working on it. 6 companies have come forward, and we are at a very advanced stage of working with them. So this will be the first, I even don't call it high-speed railway, because high-speed railway is a generic name now, which normally confines itself to about 330, 340 kilometers. This will be much higher than that. And therefore, we are working on that strategy. And therefore, we'll be very happy to find out how you develop, how you go along. And I'm sure in India, you want to know how you'll succeed. There are enough number of people who can guide you looking at your horoscope. Where are you going to go? So investors will look at your balance sheet and your projections, but these people will not look at any of those, but can tell you exactly where you are going to go. But if you ask me, I'm not neither an astrologer nor an investor. So how do I judge your future? I think I was just looking at it. Your world headquarters was in a garage. So you have a lot of contemporaries, not contemporaries, but someone who has the same ancestry. Google started from a garage. Facebook virtually almost from there. So if you can go by that, you have chosen a garage to start your world headquarters, then I'm sure you'll go the way they have gone. So I really wish you all the best, offer you my best wishes and all the successes, and we'll be very happy. As I said, we'll watch it very interestingly. As I said, in India we have to follow a very rigorous process before selecting a partner. We have to have a process which has to be extremely transparent, extremely participating, and something which will really inspire the confidence of anybody who feels that what we are doing is right. In fact, we awarded 2 major contracts for Alstom and GE, and the GE and Alstom said they were the best processes followed anywhere in the world. And those who lost, they are also Fortune, not 500, but Fortune 5 companies. And they said they're happy that they lost because the process was so transparent. So I think this is something which is non-negotiable, which will follow extremely transparent process to arrive at a decision. But as I said, our minds are open, though we'll not go hyper right now, but we are happy about it. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our CEO, Rob Lloyd, to come up on stage. Our leader, who has been presiding over our incredible growth. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Shervin. And Minister, thank you very much for those comments. I have the distinct pleasure now to introduce another really fantastic guest. We listened to what the Minister just said about the vision of developing technology in India, of making things happen that will allow us to capture the intellect and capabilities and innovation that's here. So I have the really distinct pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who's been known for branding all those attributes in India. I had a chance to meet him yesterday. We are absolutely thrilled to have him here. The idea of make it in India is completely consistent with the business model that we're pursuing and completely consistent with the Minister's comments. So if I could ask you to join me in welcoming, please, the CEO of Niti Aayog, Amitabh Kant. Amitabh, thank you for joining us. Oh, I apologize, I'm supposed to do this, and I am so eager to have you speak that I forgot to do that. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, sir.
Shervin, Rob, Nick, the Hyperloop team, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. These are very transformative days in India, actually. We are growing at about 7.6% per annum. Our ambition is to grow at 9 to 10% per annum year after year for 3 decades or more. We're seeing a huge amount in urbanization. If you go by the latest McKinsey study, in the next 5 decades, we'll have 700 million additional Indians getting into the process of urbanization. As I speak here today, every minute we see 30 Indians moving from rural areas to urban areas. When the West urbanized, when America urbanized, you could live in New Jersey, travel to New York, guzzle gas, travel in limousine. You could create cities like Atlanta where 99% of the people travel by cars. So you created some of the most polluting cities in the world, simply because land, gas, and water were all cheaply available. These are all scarce commodities. And actually, while the process of urbanization has ended across America, it's ended across Europe, it's nearing its completion in China. In India, it's just begun. And in the next 5 decades, we'll do more urbanization than what we've done in the last 5,000 years. But if India was to follow the Western model, then you'll require 4 planet Earths. But alas, we have only 1 planet Earth. And therefore, India needs a very innovative and a very sustainable strategy of growth, one which is very, very transformational. And this cannot be done till we don't use technology to leapfrog, till we don't disrupt the way we urbanize and the way we transport. And the challenge really is that we're doing many innovative things. For instance, goods produced in the northern part of India today take 13 to 14 days to reach the ports on the western coast of India. By 2018 end, you'll have the dedicated freight corridor which will put goods in 14 hours. So from 14 days to 14 hours. That's only on containers. But I think what India is passing through is a huge energy, vibrancy, and dynamism as far as the young startup movement is concerned. We are seeing a huge amount of disruption. India is the only country in the world which has 1 billion biometrics, 1 billion mobile. We'll be making all these present mode of digital transaction all irrelevant in the next 3 to 4 years. And therefore, the key to India's growth at rapid pace is how we transform the process of urbanization, how we transform the way people and things move. And the only way to do it is if you have a very disruptive technology. And without disruption, it is not possible for India to leapfrog. And therefore, what the Hyperloop presents is a transformational technology which will enable many countries to leapfrog. And its relevance, to my mind, is not in LA, it's not in Nevada, it's not in the United States of America. Because living there, you're finding solutions to problems for very few people. You need to find solutions for a vast number of people who need to move say from Trivandrum to Bangalore, we do it in about 12 to 13 hours if you're able to do it in 40 minutes. And therefore, this in many ways will be transformational in the process, the entire process of growth, in the process of urbanization, in the process of connectivity, in the process of multimodal hubs, in the process of, entire connectivity process. And therefore, this is a unique, really a unique disruptive technology. What I would suggest is that we will be very happy to facilitate, act as a catalyst. Our job is to ensure that India becomes a very disruptionist country. We'll be very happy to work in partnership with you. My view is that the future for you doesn't belong in the United States of America. It doesn't belong in Europe. It belongs to places which require solutions. And therefore, I think the government of India and we in the National Institution for Transforming India would be very delighted to work in very close partnership with you. And anything that we can do to accelerate the pace and the process of it, we'll be very delighted to take it forward. I wish you all the best. You're doing a pilot in LA. I'm pretty sure it will be a success because you have a very unique, committed team which has already made a success of Cisco. And therefore, this passion, this commitment, this dedication with which you are taking it forward, we look forward to your taking this forward with 10x speed of what you've done in LA, in India. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Amitabh, thank you very much for your comments and thanks for joining us. I thought it might be a little bit helpful for me to spend a few minutes just level setting what is this Hyperloop, where are we in the development of the technology, and what could be the next steps that we pursue as we actually do the hard work required to investigate about the opportunity to make this a reality here in India. So let's start with some of the things that I'd like to see us cover today. First of all, we just heard that India is committed to making this the place in which technologies are developed and one of the most innovative and transformative economies in the world because the potential is all there. We are committed. And Shervin, you heard the words of the Minister of Amitabh, but the vision we have for this company is to actually build a partnership with some of the most important partners here and do some of the important development together as we build this platform going forward, because there's a lot of work left to do, and there's so many smart people and committed people here available to help us get that work done. So I think we really do share that vision. We really do pursue a model that makes that happen, and I think together in partnership with some of the offers of your support, we can make some truly great things happen. First of all, what's Hyperloop? I'm going to just take a few minutes here and explain the basics, but Hyperloop is transportation in an enclosed environment. Think of this as two-way tubes, one going this way and one going in the opposite direction. Those tubes can be above the ground on pylons, and farms can be underneath of them, people can cross underneath, or they can be in tunnels, and much less expensive tunnels than the large-scale tunnels required for rail or for highway traffic. So we can go in a very smaller enclosed surface and actually dig and drill and make those tunnels much more quickly than you might think of a traditional major tunneling project. We have designed an electric propulsion motor, which is affixed inside the tube. Power is applied for only a portion of the tube's distance, and that electric motor is controlled by a piece of software and control that allows us to only use power when the pod moves over top of the motor. And there's a lot of energy used, but we turn it on and off in microseconds. And we've designed that platform and tested that platform, and I'll show you an example of it actually having been tested as a component earlier in the year. Then we build a pod. What's a pod? It's a vehicle. It rides on magnetic levitation. It has magnets affixed to the bottom of it, which run away from the energy as we create similar polarity between the magnets and the pod. and the coils inside of the tube. We can put cargo in that pod. We can put passengers in that pod. Both of them will require regulators to work with us to create the certification and safety tests required to make this a reality. We will not anticipate anything that would ever put human life in any peril, so we will need to work extensively with governments and regulators to make that happen. And then we remove the pressure from inside that tube. So in a low pressure environment equivalent to 160,000 feet above the Earth's surface, we have a equivalent to an airplane with some spaceship-like characteristics, floating on magnets with very little resistance, using an electric motor to propel it, and as a result we can go really fast, depending on route up to 1,100 kilometers an hour. We can use very little energy, and we can make some of the possible connections in a country like India go from hours, and in the case of freight, from weeks to days and minutes. And I think that's the transformation that's possible with Hyperloop. We can build a single infrastructure that can carry both people and cargo. So in the evening, when passengers aren't moving, we could move cargo packages in this on-demand economy that we see the consumer moving towards. Every journey is point-to-point, and this is so important. We don't stop at every stop. And with the fantastic new metro that's here in Delhi, that has been one of the infrastructure successes that we should all say great things can happen quite quickly, a metro stops at every station. A Hyperloop doesn't stop at every station. It goes only point to point. So when you see the routes here and the maps that we have developed with some of the teams that have been presenting their ideas, it's a point-to-point solution. And one of the advantages is city center to city center, point to point, allows us to really transform the time that's required to make this work. And by the way, we have to connect with other modes of transportation. We will go to the airport, we'll come to the city center, we'll come right up to an existing and major train station, or connect to a major artery of a metro, because this is just the high-speed backbone for existing transportation that exists today. And just like the internet required this high-speed backbone, the Internet of Things that's emerging requires a new mode of moving the physical things as quickly as we've learned to move the digital. Now we're here today because in May last year we said, well, we don't have all the best ideas as to where Hyperloop makes sense, so we asked the world in a global competition called the Hyperloop One Global Challenge. We said, where should we bring this idea first? And we had 2,600 teams registered. The largest number of those teams came from India, 130. We had, along with our transportation economists and engineering teams, we collaborated with them from May until January and selected the best 35 ideas in the world for where Hyperloop routes could evolve, and 5 of those are on display right now here at today's summit. And I wondered if you could join me in thanking the teams that have worked so tirelessly, presented their ideas today, and will be again with us after today's session, spent hours with us yesterday and with our experts. I'd like to thank all of the Hyperloop One Global Competition teams from India that spent their time, their energy, and their brain power in coming up with 5 of the best ideas in the world. Could you join me in giving them all a round of applause? They're all here, and I'd like to thank you. And I'd like to make the bet that with the government support, with what we really can do in terms of building an ecosystem that would allow this to be possible, perhaps 1 or 2 of those routes could become the first Hyperloop systems to go into production in the world. And I would be extremely proud to see that happen. You'll see routes that completely transform the times that it requires to move across major portions of this country. You'll see routes that connect smaller distances between cities, could open up job opportunities for people to not have to move in this decade-long urbanization, but perhaps live 300 miles away from where they could work. And imagine the difference that would make on the definition of a city in India. If I could live 300 kilometers away, still go to the office and back in 30 minutes or less, that transforms the definition of a city. That changes what we describe as a city and these great cities of the world to actually almost power regions. And when you think of the distance between Chennai and Bangalore as being 21 minutes, that means I could live in either city, work in either city, and have a point-to-point connection which takes me to a city center and major stops inside those cities. Up to 4 hours in plane, including getting to the airport, checking in through security, and returning that. We see this in a tunnel, into a city center, above grade when possible, in a tunnel through mountainous areas, and actually transformative in terms of eliminating the barriers that society puts in front of opportunities for all of us to pursue our dreams and the best jobs in the world, in the country and in the world. So we do redefine the definition of a city. And remember, it's that 30-minute rule which now allows us to make 30 minutes a whole regional center. And that is very much part of the transformation that Shervin first thought about when he founded this company. We can rewrite the rules of what it means to be included in opportunities when it's expensive to live in the great cities of the world today, which it is expensive to live. I could live somewhere else and still have the benefits of working and enjoying the benefits of those great cities without having to invest in the more expensive real estate. And it completely redefines the manufacturing models that we see. Because when we talk about a manufacturing base in India, we need to redefine to the next version of manufacturing, where we have 3D printing and distributed manufacturing connected very quickly with supply chains operating much more efficiently than they do today. And that's one of the challenges that I think we do need to overcome to build a Make in India strategy a reality. We need better logistics and better internal transportation systems, and we need the next generation of manufacturing architecture, which is not just the standard factory, but more of a distributed factory where everyone plays very quickly in this on-demand economy. And really, most importantly, in this dialogue today, we're here to say that we're building this thing. This is not an insignificant challenge. What I described, I'm trying to make simple, but the design of the propulsion and energy management systems, the design of the safety systems, of the control systems that will be required to effectively move a vehicle up to 700 miles an hour is not a menial engineering task. And therefore, we've assembled some of the brightest minds in the world. This is in our LA campus. Shervin, you gave us some of the data, but it's amazing how quickly this company has grown from the day I started in September of 2015. There were 37 employees. There's 237 today. There'll be nearly 500 by the end of this year. There'll be thousands working on this project. And I believe the next wave of growth will be in partnership with those countries that want to help us continue to develop the various aspects of this technology. We have an innovation campus in Los Angeles, some very smart people there, PhDs and masters of all sorts of engineering disciplines, working together, not in silos, but working in a DevOps model for hardware, which is why we're able to achieve so much so quickly. As the software industry transformed to DevOps, the hardware industry is transforming in the same way to design, test, and build. And through the school of Elon Musk, our team has decided that the only way you can decide if a rocket's going to fly, you have to launch a rocket. And even if you learn things from launching that rocket, you will learn them quicker and you'll learn more valuable lessons than by constantly modeling and looking for some theoretical perfection which can't occur unless you actually do it. And this company is the Hyperloop that's building the system today. We have a factory of 100,000. This is a company that started 2 years ago, folks, right? Employee number 1 hired on November 2nd, 2014. We have a 108,000 square foot factory perfecting the manufacture of the components of Hyperloop. You want to make in India and do it here? We could take all the learnings that we have and transport the methodologies, the systems and components and programming, and learn more in doing that by building a production system here. That's exactly why we have a 108,000 square foot factory, because we're not going to be making these components out of steel and aluminum and shipping them elsewhere. They'll be made in the countries that decide to host the projects that we'll pursue. We have a test facility in North Las Vegas. We've purchased acres, 50 acres of land. We're developing a prototype. The first phase of that prototype will be operating shortly. Then we'll make it longer. Then we'll do banking. Then we'll do switching. We'll be testing and developing this technology for years, but our vision is to then do that on production routes along with a country that wants to host us and create the real engineering jobs and create the real opportunity that Amitabh talked about, and that the minister also talked about in today's opening. You might have seen this test earlier in the year. This was a component test of the propulsion system. You see those white coils that were on the bottom that propelled very quickly the sled down a rail track. We won't have rails inside the Hyperloop. But what we are building right now is the full-scale production, where that component, where the pods, where the track, where the tube, where the pumps are all demonstrated as a full-scale system. And this is what's going on in the desert today. We've not been showing this before, but that's the system test that's underway. And before the summer, we will publicly demonstrate a full-scale Hyperloop in operations, and we will be inviting everyone from here to come and join us, because once we show you that the architecture will work, the next thing on our minds is now who should we work with in building that architecture. This is over a half a kilometer of tube. This is our CTO. This is our president of engineering and co-founder, Josh Geigel, showing some engineering firms around the world how big this is. You'll see the various scale up on pylons. There's the pumps that will reduce the pressure and bring it down to 100 pascals of pressure. So let's be really clear why we're here today, because the real Hyperloop company is now in India. We'd like to make this a collaboration and not something that we do in the United States. And our objectives are to make this technology happen and do it in collaboration with many, many of the smartest people and business partners and government partners in the world. So the real Hyperloop company has just launched in India today. Not only that, but we have some very exciting projects underway. I'm going to try to go through them very quickly. Our first project we did was a study along with the government in Finland. We're on our way to Finland. After we wrap up later on this evening, some of us are going to Finland because the Finnish government is extremely interested in the transformative impact that we can have on jobs and the availability of jobs and offsetting the high cost of living in Helsinki with the opportunities to live less expensively elsewhere. We're doing a study supported by the government of the Netherlands. We're doing a study in the port of Los Angeles. Anyone been to Los Angeles? Worst traffic in the United States. 39% of the sea containers come through that port, and there's two highways, the 710 and the 405, the worst traffic highways in the United States, primarily because they are filled with sea containers. Why don't we build a Hyperloop from the port and scoot them 71 miles inland and bypass the city and put them on a train or put them on a truck where they'll go to the rest of the United States. We'll release the results of that preliminary study sometime in the next few weeks. And some of the most advanced work has been going on in Dubai, where I would say the notable part has been working with a real customer that operates the ports, DP World, who are also operating ports in India, as well as RTA, the Road and Transport Authority, which is the regulator in Dubai, who regulate the airports, who regulate the metro, who built the new canal. They are the regulator, and our work there has been collaborative in building out a roadmap as to how Hyperloop could become a reality across the Emirates, but starting in Dubai. Those are some of the projects. There was a slide here with more, but the ones I want to focus on today are the collaborative opportunities to do this in India, and that's why we're all here. So, history was made in 1903. This is important for two reasons. First of all, the world didn't gather necessarily and understand the impact of Kitty Hawk when the Wright brothers first took flight. And we saw the last new mode of transportation was developed by these inventors and future thinkers in 1903. This is 2017. It's about time that another new mode of transportation was developed to help us keep up with the growth of the planet, with an on-demand economy, with the stresses we've put in terms of urban life, the definition of new digital cities, and that's exactly what we're doing at Hyperloop. So history will be made in the deserts of Nevada in the next few months. We will invite all of you to come and join us. But in the meantime, I think history is being made here today in India as we start a very important part of our collaboration. And my big dream, after having spent a lot of time seeing India thrive and drive the IT industry, would be to see India thrive and drive the transportation revolution that's going on right now. And that is our offer, that's our objective. And if we do nothing less than that, I'll be very disappointed. So thank you very much for your kind attention. And I would like to thank you. Now, Nick, let's make a decision right now as to whether we keep going, and I think we will. Can I tell you what we're going to do next? What are we going to do next? Yes, you would. Thank you very much.
So we did, the reason for that little, is this my microphone on? The reason for the little hesitation is that we were originally going to take a break. But given there's so many people here and there's so much excitement and we're getting through it and we really wanted it to be punchy, we've decided not to take a break. So sorry you're not going to get a cup of coffee or whatever it is that you wanted. But we're going to hand over now to somebody who has really helped us over the last few months. When I first came, our first visit to India, well, not personally, I've been coming here for 20 years. I've just spent 2 weeks on holiday here, an incredible experience. But from a business point of view, our first visit here was only 30 days ago. You think of the progress. After 30 days to have an event like this, I can tell you is quite incredible. But a gentleman who helped us right from the very beginning, who we met at the hotel and said, let me tell you a way in which we can do this, and let me give you some comparisons for what happened previously in India when new technology was introduced, is our next speaker. Devinder from KPMG. And before you come up, what he said to me, and I always remembered, and which is why he's on the agenda, he said, Nick, you need to realize about India. India has the best track record in the world for taking technology and running with it quick and leapfrogging. This is the next leapfrog opportunity for India. And I said, Devinder, I would really like you to talk about that. He had the flu last week. He worried me. He said, I've got the flu. I don't know whether I can do it. He's looking really healthy today, so I hope that's not just an act. And so with that, Devinder, if you would like to step up and please do your comments, and thank you very much for your help. Oh, and I believe you also get some flowers, so I'm sure that's a wonderful gift for you, so thank you very much. Thank you so much. Please welcome Devinder. And there's a clicker, by the way. Forward.
Yeah, thank you, Nick and Rob, for all the wonderful exposition that you've given to this august audience. The agenda was set, of course, by the minister as well as Mr. Amitabh Kant, who was my senior colleague from my former civil service days. And some of the elements that we will see, are represented in some of the conversations that we've been having. And we are looking at Hyperloop, and we're looking at a leapfrog future. And this was the first thing that came to my mind when Nick and me had this conversation some time ago. And we are, of course, very happy to be Hyperloop One's KPMG US is their Hyperloop partner. And we look forward to them coming in India and setting up and partnering with them, take this forward. But before I actually look to the future, let me go back to the year 2008. I am a part-time farmer at times, and this is my village in India. And so my pump house motor had broken down, and I had called somebody to repair it. It's a grainy shot, so please forgive that one. And the person came in to repair the motor, and he looked at it and he said, I need something that I don't have. And I thought, oh God, I lost a day. Here is somebody who's come in. I thought the motor would be repaired today, the pump house would be working, but it's not going to happen. And while I was thinking of that, this gentleman flashed out his mobile phone, talked to his employer, immediately told him what he wanted. In 30 minutes, that was made available, and I could repair the pump that day. What had happened? India had leapfrogged. It was the year 2008. That mobile phone saved one daily wage on that day. It saved the idling of a pump house. It saved the idling of a farm tractor as an asset. And on the way back to my home in the village, that's what I was thinking. And that's what India did. We knew that we need to communicate. In late 1980s itself, we set up the Department of Telematics. We set up rural exchanges. We set up urban exchanges called RACs and MACs. But we understood that trying to lay copper lines across would be a problem. And then somewhere along the line, we woke up to the technology, and today we became one of the largest telecom markets in the world. And so that's the feeling I get when I look at these kind of technologies, about how India can understand what it can take out of a technology and run with it and go ahead and operationalize it, productionalize it, and take it forward in the market. So we've been running with a number of speeds in various modes across various, if you see Japan, these are the high-speed systems. You see India has been talking about 70 to 90 kilometers per hour on average. Minister Prabhu has sort of taken it upon himself as a kind of a mission area in which he is launching what is now called the Gatiman Express at 160 kilometers an hour. But could India do this? All those things are working at the same time. It's a diverse country. It needs everything. It's got farmers, it's got technology, it's launching 104 satellites in space at one go, is recognized for being a space power, all those things. But at the same time, it also needs to leapfrog. It needs to find new ways of making sure that that 9 to 10% growth that it so badly needs for making sure that we address the development challenges is made available. If we look at the IT sector, how again we played catch up. And I'm trying to sort of root our understanding of leapfrogging as a technology leapfrogger in the Indian context. In the 1980s, there was a conversation of the new millennium. And I thought that was remarkable for a developing economy to start talking of a new millennium. And this new millennium translated itself into computers. It translated itself into IT initiatives, IT-enabled services. Yes, of course, we had our doubts. There were some of the naysayers who said, we'll lose jobs. We already need jobs, but computers are going to replace people. But that didn't happen. The technology flourished. It creates more jobs, creates more opportunities. And actually, if you see today, we are touching $100 billion in exports. That is a kind of leapfrogging that India is able to adapt, get over its initial fears, find a grounding for itself, and then move forward. This is, two instances that I would like to mention. The year again was 2008. I was accompanying my Prime Minister as part of his delegation to the ASEM meeting. It was 7th ASEM meeting in Beijing. And the Prime Minister had a poolside meeting with the Mongolian president. And we had some things on the agenda, and those things were discussed. But then to our entire surprise, the Mongolian president, President Enkhbayar, he asked my Prime Minister, can you send some Indian farmers over? And this really took us by surprise, because that was not something that we were expecting. And then he talked that for a country with so much population, a country with a development challenge, you haven't had a food shortage in years. And I've got a lot of expanse in Mongolia, and I need to use that. And I know your farmers have the expertise to do that. Later on, when we came out, the ASEM was being held in the Hall of the Peoples, and I was sort of, looking around and thinking to myself, yes, we haven't had a famine in years. And if you see the economic history of India, you would see, famines occurring with almost regular intervals at 50 years, and millions of people were dying. But we'd won that over. High yielding varieties, new methods of farming, the mechanized farmers, and India has never had a food shortage, and today is one of the global largest producers of food in the world along with China. So I'm just trying to place the idea of the leapfrog in the Indian context. It's not a small thing for a developing country that came, in 1947, found its independence, and is today does not have a food problem. It has not seen a famine. Of course, distribution and logistics has helped, and there's much more to do in that area, but that's the technology leapfrog. And the second part is the concern that we today have, for example, in some countries around, Indian techies and immigration. And the moment there is a bit of fear on that count, we have invites to Indian techies from Europe. And it surprised me around 3 days ago when the Chinese official media newspaper welcomed Indian techies to Beijing. And I was reminded of 2008 for some reason. It was in 2008 when a visiting delegation of the Chinese industry requested the then Chief Minister of Karnataka, the state in which Bengaluru is situated, in asking for Bangalore techies. In 80s, we didn't know where to go, but we thought and we grounded, we rooted, and we developed IT and IT-enabled services as technology. And today's India is recognized as a global leader, both as a food producer, both in IT. So that's the kind of, and telecom example we have given. So that is the kind of thing which I see the strategic advantage that comes to first movers when they start adopting technologies. So can Hyperloop be that leapfrog that gives that strategic advantage to India? That India adopts this technology, partners with this technology, and then is able to offer this to the rest of the world? What the minister and Mr. Kant as well as Rob have exposed us all to. Is that possible? Yes, of course. We can see that the time garlands are decreasing. Rob has already mentioned this about Mumbai, Chennai. We were looking at the Delhi-Mumbai corridor, and we see that the times are crashing. And this has got great ramifications for what India is trying to do now. If these cities go like this, in terms of not being disconnected anymore, but in actually finding a connect between themselves where the time is crashed to 70 minutes or 80 minutes, then this is exactly what India is working for. India is working for developing itself along economic corridors. I worked along the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor along with Mr. Amitabh Kant. He's left, but he was the first managing director of the DMIC, and I was the director of the Prime Minister's office, then coordinating it from that office. And subsequently, the Amritsar-Kolkata Industrial Corridor now being planned out on the eastern sides. So this corridor-based development model is something that is so central to India's economic progress right now. And we see that the Hyperloop crashing times makes available this technology as a backbone to make sure that there is economic growth in the country to address that 9 to 10% growth challenge that we are talking. And so while the Hyperloop is the backbone, is the fast backbone, we've got cities all around it, which are also the smart cities on the Government of India's list. And these cities have a multiplier advantage to get out of this. So can somebody stay in Jaipur and work in Delhi? India is fast urbanizing. We know that at this point of time, it has urban challenges in terms of services, in terms of urban infrastructure, municipal infrastructure. So rather than prevent the agglomeration of people, can people develop in the existing urban centers that they are already located in? Yes, they can. There are real estate advantages. Their land is more easily available. Land is cheaper. It is easier to locate industries. So all those vector multipliers come into play when we start looking at this as investment regions, as places to stay, as places to develop specific industries that can take advantage of the Hyperloop backbone. So the smart city and the smart mobility and the Internet of Things and green transport and the Hyperloop is something that's an enabler for all of these. If we look at the Government of India's plans of developing today, the essential Make in India concept is coast-centric. And that's right, because the ports are there, most of the industrial zones are there, and that's where it's easy to get a logistics advantage. So we see the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor, and we see the development of India moving along the coast. But in case we move to a Hyperloop model, then there is a potential that within minutes, we are able to extend that economic zone to the hinterland, much inwards. And as I said, land in a densely populated country is a huge challenge. So those industries and industrial clusters and specific product that can be made, for example, autos are there, pharmaceutical industries are there, special economic zones are there, they can move farther away from the coast and they can start moving to the hinterland. And this is the kind of efficiencies that are possible. The ports get decongested. You could either do maybe a $5 billion investment at the Jawaharlal Nehru port today, or you could say, let me build a Hyperloop and immediately clear containers as they're offloaded. There's no need of stacking the container. I keep on putting it in the loop and I keep on putting it out. So that's a choice. We could decongest Mumbai, we could create greener transport, and we could have just-in-time movement of goods, lowering inventory costs, increasing the logistics performance index, and all those efficiencies that are involved in that part of the industrial chain. So this is a clear possibility that we see that could come about in terms of taking the Make in India program to the hinterland. So again, rooting it in the Indian context of how Hyperloop will go forward is that it addresses the development challenges of India at this point of time. The government talks of Skill India, the government talks of Startup India, it talks of Make in India, and all those issues are addressed clearly by this kind of movement that we see in technology upgradation and leapfrogging. And the good thing, as I said, is yes, India is adept at this. It can take this forward. And whether it's the climate change commitments that India has made in Paris, and whether it's the promises that the government has made to the people of economic growth, all those issues are clearly addressed here. I want to close quickly because I know we're running out of time. But just before I close this, I want to say that, yes, India is a continent-sized country. And as a continent-sized country, it has many challenges. It's diverse. Yes, it has the world's largest middle class. It also has a great development challenge, a great amount of poverty. It also has, you're launching space, but you're also looking at farmers. At this point of time, the largest employment is in the farm sector. So agriculture, industry, everything is there at the same time. So what it means India needs farm roads, it needs farm tractors, it needs the high-speed rail, it needs expressways, it needs multi-axle vehicles, but as we have situated this entire context with Indian roots, there is space for a Hyperloop leapfrog. There is space for this disruption. And the advantage that India has is it takes this disruption, it internalizes it, it productionizes it, and it commercializes it, and takes it forward for all the strategic advantages that we see. So what I submit to you, to the August audience, is these three issues. Can India leapfrog with Hyperloop? Can India take the first mover advantage and be a strategic provider of jobs in India, stabilizing the technology in India, and then taking it to Asia, Africa, wherever it is needed? And can Hyperloop help India in making sure that the externalities that flow in through economic growth are very much possible? So the leapfrog advantage, the strategic first mover advantage, and the flowback effects of externalities. And that is something that we will continue to ponder over the next few minutes as we have the panel in place, and also as we partner with Hyperloop and go forward in locating this context in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Devinder. We're going to go into the final session now, and we will start the debate. You know what? I can do it just four. I'll do it from here. Just four. Oh, anywhere you like. Sit anywhere you like. Yes, at the end, yeah. All right. So I'm going to be the MC for this, and here's where I take off the sort of Hyperloop One hat a little bit and try and get to the real issues and the real debates. Because in our conversations around the world, but particularly here in India, we often get the yes, but, you know, will it happen? How do we do this in India? Can we really do it? So I'm going to start off, first of all, with the issue of city. Is this really an opportunity to build new cities? Can we really build new cities? Can you really live and work in different places? And actually, Subbu, I'm going to come to you first. My understanding is that you are worldwide are responsible for real estate within McKinsey. I don't think McKinsey needs any introduction, so I'll skip that if that's okay. But really, I mean, we've heard a lot about smart cities. Is Hyperloop an enabler of smart cities?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I think as McKinsey, we are now helping many governments around the world design greenfield cities. In the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, in China, a few in India. It's quite interesting as you design a new city, which as you know will last for the next 50 to 100 years. You have to plan them, you have to write the rules that will be relevant for the next 100 years. It's quite interesting, but as you design these new cities around the world, we are ensuring from day one that we factor in many technology innovations. You know, that's not the place where you look at the legacy and just extrapolate it. So, Nick, to your question, in many of the new cities that my team and I are working on, we provide for autonomous vehicles as the default. We provide for electric vehicles as a primary source of mobility. And we provide for technologies like Hyperloop for transportation. We don't believe that people in the next 50 years will live in the suburbs, you know, bear the brunt of traffic for about an hour, will work. We actually think people with technologies like these will mature, they'll commercialize and offer a much higher standard of living. I think one of the experts on something called Happy Cities, I don't know how many of you have heard Charles Montgomery. I think he mentions that anybody who travels more than 40 minutes to go to his workplace needs to earn 25% more from a salary point of view to feel good, right? So there's a clear correlation between wasting less and less time and being more productive and enjoying high livability. So I absolutely think this is not a question of if, we are planning these cities to accommodate technologies like Hyperloop.
I guess we have to be careful that those people who are already getting the 25% bump don't think they're going to lose it if there's a Hyperloop. So, but I think we understand the point that you're making, and I guess that raises the issue of state versus government. And actually, Vinayak, I'm going to come to you first on this issue. Is this a central government-driven initiative, in your experience, in India, or is this a state? Because what Subbu was just describing is presumably from a state point of view, that would be where some of these routes they've got existing dots on them, they're existing cities, but they could be brand new cities. It's an opportunity for brand new cities, attract investment, GDP. We'll talk about finances shortly, but is it central government or state? What will really make this happen? Yeah. Microphone, yeah.
It's a good question. While we all rave about, we use words like futuristic, breakthrough, revolutionary, transformational, the important point is that these are also these words themselves lead to certain embedded problems, which are embedded in the governance structures of every country, every nation. We're no different. For years, we have debated whether urban metro rail belongs to the Ministry of Railways or to the Urban Ministry. I am not sure we've sorted that out yet. And then comes Hyperloop. The real issue in Hyperloop is, I think, while you are working out your prototype on the deserts of Nevada and in your labs, so the physical model's taking shape. You are going to be doing detailed project reports and feasibilities from point A to point B, including in India, so you're going to get the cost economics and the financials slowly taking shape on Excel spreadsheets. While you do these two, I think as you dig deeper into India, you will realize that you will have to do a certain amount of very hard work in terms of figuring out where does your regulatory domain fit in. You are not really a rail substitute. You're a transportation solutions provider. You are challenging the rail sector, you're challenging the road sector, and you're challenging the aviation sector. A commuter traveling between Mumbai and Pune, there are probably more commuters on the Delhi-Pune highway, and as many people taking the flights in and out of Pune to Bombay as are taking the rail. So I think one of the things in our minds, and this I shared with you over lunch, is I find a lot of conversationally, I find a huge degree of preponderance on comparing Hyperloop to railways and high-speed rail and, bullet train. I think that's misplaced. You should stop comparing yourself and, taking the conversation to Hyperloop vis-a-vis rail. It's not right. It is Hyperloop as a new, fresh transportation challenger, and it's a completely new technology that challenges all three modes of transportation. Having said it, so your regulatory problem is not just center and states. In fact, to my mind, center and states is a less of a problem. When you want clearance for this new technology to be operating in India, the clearance for the project, the clearance for safety standards, the clearance of being able to charge tickets, to commercialize the operation, I am not sure today where it belongs. Why should it belong to the Ministry of Railways? Similarly, why should it belong to the Ministry of Road Transport? And certainly it should not belong to the Ministry of Civil Aviation. So the million-dollar question in my mind, and you have many people in the room to help you think through this. You've got Amitabh Kant at one level, and you've got Amit Kapoor sitting here from JSA at another level of a legalistic governance framework. You've got people in the room to help you think through. But you certainly have a challenge. It's not just center and state. If I give you a simple example, in roads, a national highway is both. A road is both. A national highway, defined with an N, is a central subject. But a state highway, national highways are only 2% of the network. 98% is with the states, and they're called state highways. On transmission towers in electricity, Power Grid does the national links. The states do the state level links. So you will certainly require a regulatory framework within the transport department of a state headquarters, whether it's transport or not, or something else we'll have to figure out, and you require a central regulator at the New Delhi level to actually give you the set of clearances that will make you go operational. I think I've given a long answer to a short question, but these are issues to be handled in parallel as you do the engineering, as you do the financials. Please spend as much time on the governance framework. Certainly in our country, I can't talk for the other countries.
So I actually think that you've given a very relevant answer to a short question, and I'm actually going to continue that, because that's the dilemma. You've posed the dilemma not just of central government versus state, but also comparison with existing modes. There's always the temptation to think, I have to put this in a box. Is it a train? Well, no, it's not a train. Is it a plane? Well, it's not a plane, but it's kind of like a plane near the ground. Is it a spaceship? It is a challenge for us. And actually, if I...
May I interrupt on a little humorous note?
You absolutely may interrupt.
The last thing you want challenge is by the Ministry of Petroleum to say it's a pipeline.
Well, I'm an IT guy, so I'm challenging you from an IT perspective. My own view, is that when I looked at it, I didn't know what it was either. And then I came to the conclusion that it was something. It wasn't any of those things. So I'm going to share my
very happy.
Share my view.
This pipeline, so he's looking particularly pleased.
Yeah, it's not an oil pipeline. My own view was, I thought it was physical broadband, and what I mean by that is broadband moves bits, point to point, very fast. And broadband was first of all seen as a great way to download websites quicker. And we could download a film quicker. We don't talk about broadband like that now. We talk about broadband as transforming society, transforming businesses. It created Netflix. It created Uber. When I looked at it, I saw physical broadband. Broadband for people. Broadband for things. If that's the case, then you're absolutely right. It's not any of the existing modes of transportation. In fact, maybe it's more like broadband. We don't know yet what this is. I don't think people knew what any of these new things were when they first came out. However, I am going to go to AJ, because you have significant experience at looking at these types of projects from a policy, from a promotion. You looked at many infrastructure projects. And the question is, given where we are, what do you think the catalyst could be for something to happen? Are we in danger of just studying this and studying this and studying this, but not actually doing anything in India?
One of the refrains of the last hour or so has been that in some cases India has been able to leapfrog. And leapfrogging makes a great sense for India in terms of its development goals. So the challenge for you would be to see how India chooses to adopt this technology and to leapfrog in this area. Now that is a difficult challenge because you are at a stage of development where your first project is yet to be rolled out. The regulatory requirements are yet to emerge globally, and the commercial case is yet to be made convincingly. So these are the three things which you would need to look at globally. And in terms of the regulatory requirement, I would minimize the complexity of India and say that if you have a safety regulation in place, formally in Europe or the US, then you are practically through, because then it should not be very difficult for people in India to say that the regulators in Europe or the US have prescribed these safety standards. Let us look at it and see whether it needs any tweaking. The other issue is of clearances and soft regulation of fares and rights of way, etc., which in my view would not be much of a challenge once somebody is sufficiently enthused about it, either at the state government level or at the central level. And finally, of course, you would need somebody to put in the money. And if the business case is strong enough, then funds should not be a problem globally, and certainly not for India, where volumes in theory are about the highest you can get in the world. Because you look at India where it is today, we don't have the luxury of the high-speed network of China. We don't have the luxury of the highway network of Europe. The only thing that is moving fast is the air industry. So if the business case for leapfrogging becomes strong enough for India, then this is probably the largest market you have for this product.
So, thank you. So let's pick up, you mentioned the M word, money. And certainly, in some of our meetings, people have said, this is going to cost a lot of money, isn't it? And are we talking about sovereign debt? Is the US government, because you're a US company, going to do sovereign debt? There are other countries around the world who've done sovereign debt guarantees. I'm going to ask Michael from Morgan Stanley to comment on this. And the question, Michael, is, in your experience, and you have a global view based out of New York, in your view, large, complex infrastructure projects like this, what do you see as the main models to solving that issue, that at the end of the day, somebody's got to say, I'm going to put the money up?
Let's separate where the money comes from.
Is this microphone on, by the way? Yeah, okay, sorry.
Let's separate where the money comes from versus what the risks are on that money, if I could say that for a moment. So large-scale infrastructure projects, by and large, in the transportation sector, are not direct money makers. They are indirect value contributors. So in other words, let me simplify it. Urban rail. You can't charge enough in a ticket price to pay for it. So someone else has to pay. So society generally ends up paying, and that generally means the most successful models are with government support. And what do I mean by that? You generally want to go to an availability-based model, meaning a private company can construct the facility, a private company can operate the facility, but the government has to stand behind it, whether it's a local government, a national government, or a foreign government. You've seen examples of all of that. Will stand behind the credit. Now, once you have a solid credit underpinning, the money can be sourced from sovereigns, from pension funds, from mutual funds,
but the fundamental is you have to have a solid underpinning to the undertaking.
And you talked about the availability payments and as we know, those of us involved in the infrastructure, the amount of the availability payment, the guarantee, is actually determined by the wider economic benefits. So this speed of the ability of the demographic of the ridership, and when you do the calculation to see which people can travel between what distances, you calculate a value, which is the wider economic benefit. In our studies that we've done, Rob showed the chart in Finland, for example, in Dubai, where we just finished the studies, our wider economic benefits were 4 times greater than any previously wider economic benefits seen for any other transportation project. I want to ask Subbu about that, because actually, to be fair, McKinsey have helped us in a lot of those studies. Whether you care to comment on the whole subject of wider economic benefits or whatever, and also on the smart cities, you talked about real estate. I mean, real estate prices, the real estate differential. There are other people out there private investors who would see this as an enormous potential. If there's a 10x differential between the cities and where you could live, that would seem to be a tremendous new opportunity that has never existed before.
Absolutely. In fact, Nick, I love the way you characterize this as the broadband of transportation. I actually don't think Hyperloop is about a mobility solution. I think what it can disrupt and enable widespread economic development, which is why I think the question is not, is this technology viable, is it safe? I hope as well for all of us that it does become that pretty quickly, because it has wide-ranging impact on many, many things. Let me give you an example. I do a lot of work in real estate. Every city around the world is now struggling with the notion where you have very scarce land supply in prime places. You have affordable housing issues. You have plenty of land in non-prime areas. We thought we'd solve that by building 6-lane highways. We all seen the problems with that, including pollution, on human health. So I think a safe, clean way of transportation will fundamentally disrupt the way people live and the way people work, right? For example, you could imagine in many parts around the world that you can offer clean, huge public spaces, education standards where kids go to, can walk to school, but still people commute to work very easily. And that's just one. We talked about freight the other day. You can fundamentally disrupt the way ports are planned today. So I actually think this is about a widespread disruption to the economy, which is why when we do our studies, including the ones we did with you, the derived economic benefit can be multifold. I also am tempted to kind of react to what both
Please do.
Vinayak and Ajay mentioned about who'll champion this. We're now seeing this. We've seen this in Singapore. We've seen this in Dubai, and I'm sure we have enough of those in India. This requires a few individuals who are passionate. This is not about India transforming. It's about a few people who basically get excited, see the vision. Of course, all the enablers in terms of safety, financial feasibility needed. Who could have thought in 40 years Dubai could have achieved what it has done, right? Or where Singapore has done. This just requires a persistent leader. We need to give them the time, who has a vision, and I think we'll see these technologies through.
I know your colleagues both want to jump in, so we go first. AJ.
I wanted to add one dimension. In the promotion of the technology, you have not mentioned benefits in terms of carbon emissions and climate change and the green footprint. And that, I think, should be a very strong positive, both in terms of getting champions domestically and globally, and as well as some soft financing.
While there's been a lot of emphasis on reducing time between residence and place of work and this connection to real estate, let me actually just spend some time on the issue of alignment in India. In India, if you're building a road or a railway line or a transmission tower, getting permission on the use of land, which we call alignment, is one of the critical areas. Now, assuming that from point A to point B, you have got the permission of the relevant authorities of the government of India to give you an alignment from, let's say, Delhi to Mumbai or Chennai to Bengaluru or whatever. That alignment itself has a huge economic value. So when you're doing your feasibilities, my request to you is that alignment can not just carry your tube. Once you've got that alignment can carry optic fiber, it can carry oil pipelines, it can carry water, it can carry electricity transmission lines, it can carry many things that are linear, including an old-fashioned road underneath, because that alignment has already been granted and you've acquired that land to build that alignment. So when you do your feasibilities, I think your financial model would increase significantly if you build in a series of other, shall I say, stuff that can be carried through it, from optic fiber to physical stuff. That should be part of your presentation to the powers that be, to the government, over and above the point of green energy also. So please don't present it only as a tube going through on stilts, but potentially the alignment itself carries many other stuff that other industries who find it difficult to get an alignment.
And that's well said, and it raises the issue that actually there's another group of people who would be very interested in that, which is private corporations. And Michael is not only an expert on this, but Morgan Stanley are playing a very important role for us as a partner, because we're a company that's raising a lot of money. Michael, what you just heard, the opportunity, maybe you've spent a lot of time, your firm has spent a lot of time talking to potential investors. If we're right, and we think we're right, but we don't know yet that we're right, but if we're right that this is physical broadband, and you gave examples of other physical things that could go down the pipe. Nobody knew that you could do data, voice, and video. Nobody had thought of Uber, nobody had thought of all of these things. That was the physical version of what broadband could do. If we're right, then from an investment point of view, from an opportunity point of view, this changes everything, right?
Absolutely. You give the example of real estate, you give the examples of pipelines. I think all of those are relevant. Because if you just imagine the value of real estate that's interconnected by the Hyperloop versus something that's not, right? So wouldn't real estate companies want to partner on the Hyperloop? Of course they would. Land banks increase in value. So I think that's absolutely right. I think this could potentially, forget about a moment in the developed world, but in the developing world, I think the impact is exponential. Because where you have logistics log jams, which are holding back GDP growth. I mean, people talk about India wanting to get to 9 to 10%. I haven't done the work, but I'm sure some of my partners here on the panel here have done the work. If you could ease logistics log jams, what is the GDP growth multiplier? I think it's fantastic. So yes, I think if this is successful, it has the potential to change many developing countries.
I want to finish on time. We said we finish at 4. I'm going to ask a general question. This is not to any of the panelists. We talked about a big idea, physical broadband, to finish. I'm going to finish with an even bigger idea. So we thought the last one was out there. Buckle up. I'm going to frame it with a story. As I said, worked with Rob very closely at Cisco, saw networking go from a technical thing to a change the world thing. The other thing I saw was I was living in Silicon Valley. The first day I moved in, our neighbors had been there 30, 40 years. And I said, it's great to English people in Silicon Valley. I said, it's great to be here in Silicon Valley. And the guy who lived next door to me was in his late 70s, and he said, son, it's interesting that you call it Silicon Valley, but I know it as the fruit capital of California. He said, where your house was, there used to be orange trees. It was only when Intel invented this new thing called the silicon chip that suddenly everyone started using this phrase Silicon Valley, because all these companies formed around it. And then Stanford, which wasn't a world-leading university, Stanford became the place where you had to go to learn it. Suddenly they exported knowledge, they exported people. That's an effect, the Silicon Valley effect, that has lasted. Well, I think Intel invented the 8086 chip in 1968, if I'm right. So that's lasted almost 50 years. The Silicon Valley effect has lasted 50 years, and it's not going to go away. So here's the question. If we're right, if transportation is the next IT, if physical broadband is the next big leap in productivity, is there going to be another Silicon Valley? Specifically, is India's opportunity, and we heard it right at the very beginning from the information minister, from the railway minister, we heard it from Amitabh Kant, One of India's greatest exports is people. We talked about the fact that maybe they're not exporting as much anymore. India has technology, it has capability, it has people, it has universities. The question is for anybody, all or anybody, is there an opportunity for the next Silicon Valley, the Silicon Valley of transportation, to happen here in India?
Probably the right question to ask is, are there going to be multiple Silicon Valleys that will emerge out of India on this one, right? I genuinely believe taking a linear view of this country is not the way the youth and many of us think about it. I think there are people here, I know there are lots of issues and you can easily get bogged down, but there will be multiple such hubs that will get created.
Multiple.
Absolutely. If you look at aviation, with no offense to any other national countries, aviation is centered around the United States and Europe, meaning manufacture of, right? You look at rail, really it's Japan and France. Sorry. It's really Japan and France. So I think the opportunity to be a first mover in manufacturing and developing the technology and exporting it is fantastic.
Any comments from...
I would endorse that because the largest market in theory for this technology would be in India if you're successful in the next 10, 15 years.
And final word for yourself?
If you just a few days ago, how many satellites did we launch in 8 seconds? 140? 104. So I'm sure you read that news item. Our Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, released a breakthrough technology and its own R&D to release, and I believe 66 or larger % of them were American satellites that were launched by the ISRO rockets. So we're already making breakthrough progress, whether it is in, that's also a form of transportation. You're
Absolutely.
Carrying something and releasing it. It's space transportation. If we can do that, if we can leapfrog there, I see no reason why we can't leapfrog terrestrially.
And on that point, I think that's a perfect time to end. I'd like to thank the panel. I'd also like to thank the audience. I'd like to thank, most importantly, the teams. As we said here, there are 5 teams. 5 teams who've done a lot of work to actually look at business cases for routes within India. So it's a very exciting time. It's a fantastic event. Thank you to the organizers. I believe, as for the other speakers, you are all now about to receive a bouquet of flowers. So we don't pay you, but we do give you flowers. So if we could actually thank the audience, thank the panelists. You can hand them out. Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel a little bit like the Oscars, but I resisted the temptation to have a red envelope in case I opened the wrong one. But thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the event. We're going to be hanging around the coffee, which we didn't allow you to have, and other things, other refreshments, are in the other room at the back. So thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to chatting to you and cooperating with you after this event. Thank you all very much.